Yes, here we are again, everyone. We are back on the Cardboard Herald taking a look at a bird-themed game, this time Birdwatcher by Zakir Jaffrey and published by Oni Press and Renegade Games. And this was a real curiosity to me. This was a game that I wanted to check out because, you know what? I'm going to address the elephantian-sized canary in the room. That is, we live in a post-Wingspan world, a game that was so singular that it kind of monopolized the headspace and zeitgeist when it came to bird-based board games. And I wanted to know, in a post-Wingspan world, how do you make a game all about birds and separate yourself? And yeah, I know there are lots of games out there that share themes, extremely close themes, and this is something that hasn't been a problem much in the past, but there was something about Wingspan that really took the world by storm, or at least the gaming world. And it was so contrary to the most popular themes in board games at the day that anything that even plays in that realm is now compared to or contrasted with Wingspan. So I'm not saying that the game is identical or that I expected it to be identical, but I wanted to know if you were going to take that bull by the horns, or I guess that toucan by the bill, what were you going to do with it in order to set it apart so it felt so distinct that no one was going to say this is just a Wingspan knockoff. So with that enormous prologue out of the way, I think that we should talk about what is this game. So first off, Birdwatcher is really a game of set collection, and it really sets it apart not just from Wingspan, but other set collection games in that it has a linearity to it. The set collection that you're doing is really all in effort to put these birds in a row in front of you that are collected in sequence, and so long as that they're in certain proximity to each other, they're going to amplify their points. But if you break that chain by collecting another bird at the time, then that's going to disrupt that set, and you'd be starting a new set all over again, which is something that feels novel and inventive and very curious as you start playing with all of the levers and switches associated with it, which is the other aspect of the game. There's the publishing, because you are academics publishing reports on the natural world, and you can get these publishing papers that amplify points based off of what is preceding it or what's in your total set collected tableau. And there are all sorts of different motivations or strategic implications to the published reports, which become just another milestone in your collection. It wants certain birds to be behind it, or a diversity of birds behind it, or in total in your collection if you have a certain number of this or that. I did find myself thinking that it was such a cool and inventive idea that I wish were propelled farther. I wanted more variance, more demands, more risk out of the academic papers that I was getting. Not just about retroactive point acquisition for what was behind them, because those are already fixed birds in your tableau. I would have loved it if there was more that you stood to lose if you didn't get certain birds to come up in the tableau as it proceeded after publishing a paper, you know, as if it were like a hypothesis that you had written. And that's really the broad thrust of the game. Everything else is in service of building out this tableau, and that's where the game takes another kind of bold step in an interesting direction with set collection, something that I was really fascinated by, because I associate so many set collection games with just take one action on your turn, then it's the next player's turn. But in this, there's much more strategic consideration that you have, because on your turn, you have 3 actions and you just continue going around the table. People take 3 actions at a time until the game ends, when someone has a vast array of birds. That's cool, because the actions are really about attracting birds to your tree so you can do some photographing, but in doing so, that's going to scare certain birds away from your tree into the clearing, which the clearing is an area that you can attract more birds from. But if the clearing doesn't have the birds that you want to take pictures of, you go to the jungle, which is a market that refills, and all of the actions you're actually taking on your turn is either associated with taking birds that are in your tree or even a neighbor's tree, putting it into your tableau, permanently documented and unmodifiable at that point in the next available rightmost space in your tableau, or getting published works which take 2 actions to do, or any sort of manipulation of the jungle, the trees, and the clearings that are going to facilitate the acquisition of these birds and the published reports. It's not complicated, but it gives you a little bit more dynamism than you typically would expect out of a game that says, yo, we're just doing set collections of birds. Though I'll admit that the action system, by breaking certain things down into this costs 1 action and this costs 2 actions, and you can spend some bugs in order to have a bonus action on your turn, did kind of create a sort of mechanical abstraction to boil the birds down into different widgets, which I don't want to do. I want a game that is all about the natural world to be full of flavor and context and belonging and some sort of attachment to these birds. I mean, it's all here, but this sort of mechanical heavy action system on your turn does detract from that a little bit. Now, speaking of the theme that is here, well, this is all about birds of paradise. This isn't birds world round. This is zoned in on one specific set of birds. And if you've watched any sort of BBC wildlife documentaries, you know that these are some of the wildest and most interesting birds out there, both in how they look and their behaviors. And it is cool to see such a specific part of the natural kingdom, which there is just enough in there to kind of suggest differences between the birds. I mean, we don't really have much in ways of bird facts, except for a phonetic spelling of the bird's call, which is cool and delightful, and I love mimicking the birds to the best of my ability. But there are certain birds where, like, 1 bird on its own is 2 points, but if you have 2 of them right next to each other, it's like, yo, this is 15 points. And then there are some where the acquisition of several birds in a row just doesn't really accumulate as much points as you really want. And the academic paper aspect does provide a nice bookending to different sections of your tableau, which reinforces some of the setting and gives it a bit more of a thematic resonance, which I appreciate. Just as a last little note, this does have a really solid solo game to it with an automated opponent that publishes works with rapidity that you are going to have to deal with, that is difficult to contend with, and there are escalating levels of automated opponent. So it is a nice little, coffee table 30-minute bird game that you can play, which I think would be well worth investigating if you are a solo dedicated player. So on the whole, Birdwatcher is a really interesting set collection game that is both approachable but provides a lot more strategic dynamism to the set collection genre and stands apart from anything else, either thematically or strategically, that I've played to this point. And so it comes down to, do you like naturalist themes? Do you like set collection? Did you want something more out of set collection games where it was more strategic or a little bit more rigid in how you collected? If any of these things sound cool, I recommend that you check it out. Birdwatcher is definitely a game that I was happy to play and I'm looking forward to playing again. And that is our review. But I want to hear from you. What is your favorite animal, your naturalist theme that you would love to see adapted into a board game? Even if it is a little bit obscure, tell me how it would work and what makes it so interesting and cool. As always, put it in the comments below. And of course, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, thanks for being an awesome community. You know that I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.